Hello, hello. Welcome to the place for offbeat health professionals who have bravely swapped their healthcare hats for non-clinical creative caps. I'm Caitlin, a psychologist turned copywriter, and this is Healers with Hustles. Rachel McGregor is a psychologist and floral designer based in Melbourne. She works in private practice in Melbourne's CBD as a behavioural psychologist and also has a creative hustle as a floral designer. In her spare time outside of parenting her 4 boys, her business at Floral Art by Rachel provides creative flower workshops and florals for events. Welcome, Rachel. Thank you so much for being here. So, I'm really keen to hear a little bit about your story. Tell me about your journey from psychologist to florist.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for having me. I've been a psychologist for many years. I think I'm on about 17, 18 years now. And I've loved working in the field. I've worked with children and children with behavioral conditions. And I more recently started working with young adults and adults. So I've had this really interesting career working in schools and disability and private practice. But yeah, I had always this interest in, creative things. I was told when I was very young, I was very creative. At school, I was very creative. But sometimes when you're in school, there's this pressure to be academic and pursue just cerebral things, use your brain in a particular way. And I think I was kind of persuaded or dissuaded away from creative, I guess, pursuits when I was at school and heading into uni. So, I did pursue psychology, which is a wonderful career, but I always had this kind of inkling that there was like more to the story with me.
Yes. Yeah, it's such an interesting point you say about that we prioritize that like academia or that kind of thing over the arts, which is such a shame because I feel like it's such an important, well, play is such an important thing for humans. And so it makes sense
Right.
that you'd be
Absolutely.
gravitating towards that. I'm really curious to hear your answer because I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about it. But tell me, what do you tell people when they ask you, how can you go from being a psychologist to a floral designer?
Yeah, I do get a lot of raised eyebrows. Look, just to kind of backtrack a bit, like I was a psychologist for many years until I had my fourth child. The truth is, I had a bit of a burnout after that situation, and I really just need to do something different, which I sort of then decided to pursue this creative aspect of floristry, something I've always been interested in. But specifically now, when people ask that, they sort of are curious to know that how did I end up pursuing something like that? And then not only did I pursue it, I've then, when I returned to practicing after a little bit of a break, I then have continued doing both. So now I'm actually doing both. And that is interesting to people. I think, you know, like I said earlier, people are often surprised by that combination. I think because they have set ideas about professionals, particularly health professionals, that must be their everything, that must be their world. How could they have any other pursuits outside of that?
Mhm.
Particularly for such a involving and consuming profession like psychology. It is many, many years of training. It is constant professional development. It can consume your mind. It's so cerebral. So it can feel like some people like, how could you offset that with something over there that doesn't seem so serious, doesn't seem to be as, do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Like, how do you reconcile the two? And it caused that like whole conflict caused me so much turmoil and definitely burnout at
Right.
one stage when I was trying to hold those two together. Like, how could you have both? I was like, oh my gosh, I was so afraid that the APRA police were going to show up on my doorstep and take me away because
Yeah.
because yeah, it's like you're not being what a psychologist should be doing. You're
Yeah.
stepping outside of what a like your
Yes.
profession typically does.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, tell
Isn't
me
it
more
funny?
about that.
Yeah, I feel like it's very restrictive, isn't it? You pursue a profession that's, it's very serious and it's also carries a lot of responsibility. And the expectation on you as a clinician to care for your clients, to always be on top of everything, not make any mistakes. There's a lot of, really strong ethical things we have to deal with. And so I think you're right. It could be seen as like, well, how can you do something so serious and then do something so not serious? Does that make you an irresponsible person? Can I take you seriously as a psychologist? What I was thinking though, as you're asking that question, Caitlin, though, is I know that I have a family member in an orchestra and like at one of those maybe semi-professional orchestras. And she was explaining to me there are many, many people of all different professions that play musical instruments. And it's almost like that's accepted. You get these wonderful doctors and lawyers and specialists that actually do music as a side thing. And it's almost like that's more accepted. For some reason, that's like, oh yeah, that's cool. Look how talented they are. But for a psychologist to choose a separate, more creative thing, it seemed to be a little bit more, it's very, what's the word? It kind of stands out to people. It seems to be a big deal for them. So for me, I think the shift when I moved over for that period of time and I was just doing floral design at that point in time, I had a bit of an identity crisis. I had to really work out, who am I if I don't have this really serious, well-regarded profession? Title. What title do I have? Yeah.
Title. What did you learn from that? Like, what was the answer that you came up with?
I think that's a great question. I realized that actually, I think our identity shouldn't really be in what we do anyway. So I think we've really got to have a good sense of self. I think it's actually could be even, an issue for some people to put all of identity and sense of self and success and well-being into their professional work with nothing else to kind of balance that out. So it was definitely a journey to kind of let go and probably a bit of pride as well. So that period of time when I just was doing floral design, yeah, but it was just the most freeing experience.
Sort of freeing experience. But you're right, there's a sense of pride. And I even still to this day, when I, meet someone new or something like that, be at a party and they're like, oh, what do you do? I'm always quick to say, oh, I'm a psychologist, but I don't say,
Yeah.
oh, I'm a copywriter. And so I
Yeah.
think I've still got a little bit to work out
Yeah.
with that. Like, why don't I jump to the other? Because when I say I'm a psychologist, people often close up a bit. When I say I'm a
Yes.
copywriter, people are like, oh my gosh, wow, that's really
Yeah.
cool. What is that? Tell me what more. So
Yeah, that's interesting. It's
interesting.
interesting how people relate, isn't it? Because they, if at a psychologist level, they might find that intimidating. But another like me saying to people, oh, I'm a floral designer, I'm a florist. Oh, they're just, people will talk to you then. Oh, find out all about it, and they're interested to know what's your favorite flower, and so it makes it very accessible. It's been interesting watching people's response to that. I think it's certainly people in my community, my local community that I'm a part of, they viewed me a little bit differently once I'd taken on a second profession of a creative nature. So that has been really cool for me. And it's really kind of bridged gaps with different people that I maybe otherwise wouldn't have had contact and connection with. Does that make sense? Like the local creatives, when I run workshops, I meet just a broader group of people. When I go to the flower market, and then I meet with people at events, and it's just it's opened up this whole different group of people as well.
Yes, oh, so true. Creative people expands your world, doesn't it?
Yes, in a
It
good
really
way,
does
in a
in
really
such a positive.
positive way. And that's the funny thing, isn't it? It's been all, and I really honestly, Caitlin could not give a negative to my creative pursuit and my hustle. I have not been able to find yet one single negative in bringing this into my life, really honestly.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Tell me about creativity and like how that has positively impacted your
Sure.
work as a psych.
Yes, right. Yeah, I love that. This is something I'm actually really passionate about. So I'm really passionate about the pursuit of creativity and also that of working with botanic materials and nature. I think coming from a therapeutic perspective, obviously psychology is very cerebral, right? Like it's cerebral, it's emotional, it's mental. There's heart, there's complexities in it. But when you do a creative thing and something like working with flowers and natural materials, it's not just that it's stimulating in a different way and using your hands, like not just your head. So you're using your hands and you're engaging with different materials. And my goodness, like the aspect of your mind just being zoned in on these beautiful elements. Wow, like it's so I can see the benefit to the human psyche just by working with natural materials and using your brain in a different way. Kind of like with psychology, I can become very like front of your head, prefrontal cortex. And I feel like with creative things and like with my floral design work, I seem to use a different part of my brain. I've been doing a bit of research. I have done a couple of studies on it. We know that there's things like horticultural therapy and so on, which have been well validated. There's less so on work with flowers, but I'm really interested to know whether there's more research coming out about clinical outcomes of people actually working with natural botanical materials and their mental health and well-being. All I know is for me as a therapist, the improvement for me has been incredible.
I could only imagine, like you said, working with your hands and using a different part of your brain and the
Right.
mindfulness component of it as well.
Right. It's like everything that we teach our clients to do, isn't it? It's like it's the
Yeah.
same advice, But when we take it on for ourselves, I think I really feel like it's made me a better clinician. And I'm really got so many things I want to say about this topic about how the creative aspect is so
Go for
powerful.
it. Yeah, go
I'll give you
for
a little
it.
anecdote, but I had a really difficult clinical afternoon recently in practice, and I felt, sometimes you feel a bit heavy after particular sessions and so on. That's, can be experience you can have. But then the next day I picked myself up and I had the opportunity I was creating a piece for something and preparing for a workshop that I'm doing. And I was able to just really almost like I used the opportunity of being creative to process and mentally digest what had happened the day before. I wasn't sitting in front of my computer. I wasn't just like talking about it to a colleague. I was actually doing something that helped me to process and work through it. So it's like that kind of creative arts therapy thing, I guess.
Mhm.
It really helped me to unwind, and I think it's really good self-care for me as a clinician. Yeah, yeah, quite powerful.
Absolutely. So powerful. And when you were talking about that, I can't remember if I said this to you before, but yeah, my master's thesis was actually on, yeah, like art therapy and using that as an intervention
Oh, wow.
for burnout, which was, it was
Wow.
a dream.
Okay.
It was,
Oh my
yeah.
goodness. Okay,
Yeah.
so you
And
have a
like,
lot of info on this.
it's so beneficial. And interestingly, so many other professions like medical and yeah, social workers, there's quite a bit of research about like art therapy for burnout. But of
Mm-hmm,
course,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
psychologists, there wasn't anything on that, but
mm-hmm.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
yeah, the benefits were what was I'm just trying to think back to the outcomes. It was people were talking about like a sense of like self-efficacy, just generally that like they were
Yeah.
able to do more in their daily life. Of course, being able to like, yeah, unwind in
Right,
that
right,
outlet. And
right.
even like what
Interesting.
you were saying, getting out of your head and getting into your body,
Mm-hmm,
because it was really a somatic
mm-hmm.
experience. Just like you said, then like you're able to get in, use your hands and kind of process
Yes, it's
the
very
day.
embodied experience. Yes,
Yes,
and
that's exactly
mindful
what
and
it, yeah.
somatic. Yes, and kinesthetic. And we talk about the different ways that we interact with our world and our environment. Like it is really important that we are kinesthetic, that we are hands-on, that we do feel and touch and experience our worlds outside of our brains. And I feel like if you look at the history of mankind, like that is the reality, isn't it? We were never designed to just be always just in our heads. So it's powerful to use different parts of your brain and your well-being. Just seems to, I don't know, it seems to just go out of yeah, out of sight.
It really is. And I wonder why that is. Like if that's just the medicalization models of
Mhm.
our training or something like
Uh-huh.
that, or what
Uh-huh.
it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, yeah. I think there can be a certain level of eliteness around being cerebral and being, does that make sense? I know that's a judgmental thing to say, but there can be an
No,
element
no,
of
no,
that too.
yes. Yes,
Yeah,
that like
around that being the priority.
intellectualization.
Yes, yes. And when we look at different outcomes, like about creative arts therapy and so on, like, and we know there's a whole lot of other therapies that are very effective. And obviously, we often focus as clinicians on the most evidence-based and the treatment things that have been repeatedly proven through various research procedures to make sure that they are of the highest efficacy and evidence that we can use for our treatments with our clients, which is correct and good. There would be less information on, like you said, creative arts and for me, nature stuff. But I don't know if we can necessarily say that there's not proof and evidence that they are very, very effective in their ability to impact people's well-being. So now I'm really excited for more research on that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. That's so true. Is that like what do they say? Like absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. It's like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And I could a little bit of bone to pick with some aspects of like evidence-based like
But
practice, but we won't
absolutely. Yeah, we go there. That's a whole nother conversation.
that's not another conversation.
I could totally go there too. Absolutely. Absolutely. But it would be really great to get more research around the true impact on it. And yeah, we're only just scratching the
It's
surface. And maybe
we
as
are.
psychologists and maybe in health professionals having like creative outlets, we're also leading the way. It's opened up so many conversations with my clients about their well-being when I've
More
talked to
about
them about
that.
like,
Yeah.
right, right. Because I mean, it's quite often that people don't actually feel like they allow themselves to have a hobby or something outside of their main job or their family or their commitments or their sports or their health or whatever. And think that I think particularly since COVID and I've been running these creative floral workshops, I'm noticing that people really want that experience of doing something different outside of their everyday world. And I feel like as health professionals, we can actually encourage the general population to actually have that for themselves, to pursue that for themselves. Pursue for the mother stay at home with little kids who, needs to do something and feels to do something, and encouraging her to do that, or the granddad that needs to encourage to go out into the shed and tinker, and actually like really encourage people to get out there, use their creative juices. I think as health professionals, we can model to people what that self-care looks like as well, by ourselves having something in addition to our work.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that you say that about, because it is like when you realize the benefits for yourself, it does open a different type of understanding that you're like, oh my gosh, this is so powerful for me. I should ask about it for my
Right.
clients and their intake or
Right.
something like that.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And everyone has a different passion, don't they? So it's about finding your thing, finding what
Your
you are,
thing.
excited to do. Yeah. Finding your thing. Yeah.
Exactly. What
100%.
was your thing when you were in school and you were quite creative? What was your thing back then?
So I was really into drawing and graphic art and design. Yeah. So I could have easily pursued that professionally, no doubt. But again, I was sort of persuaded away from anything creative. And that, again, probably just the, you know, family culture slash, community I was surrounded by. I think I wasn't encouraged. And I think, I was actually saying this to a friend today, that if I had finished school and I had announced at that point, okay, I decided to be a designer or a floral designer. I remember going back now over 20 years ago, that more than that I finished school, more, maybe more like 25. Would I have been laughed at? Would I have felt ashamed? Would I have felt like I'd let people down? It's possible, right? I might not have felt the freedom to pursue that. And that, again, has got to do with the culture of the community that I was growing up with. But now I think, no, actually, I hold my head really high with pride that I have a hustle outside of what I have professionally. So I'm really proud of it. Yeah, it's really, really good.
That's beautiful. I'm so happy that you have that and you're proud of it, and because it is such an asset to have. Tell me more about like your actual business. Yeah, because I always talk about like secret wishes. I think it's always something I say, but I've honestly always had a secret wish, like this image of me having a florist and surrounded by beauty, and yeah.
Funny, can I be honest with you? I've had so many people say that to me.
Is that right? Wow. Yeah.
That's what's really interesting about it. They're like, oh, I've always dreamed of that. So I don't have a commercial florist shop front, just because, again, I have my own private practice in psychology. So the nature of my flower business is I do flowers for events and small events, and like so weddings or funerals or parties or events at the local community centers and so on. And I also do workshops. So the workshop part was interesting. The workshop part developed because I think when people realize, it almost went like this. People were like, well, okay, so this lady over here, like, I've got 4 children. I'm like that mom running around, the sport mom, whatever, running around town, and the psychologist. And they're like, well, hang on, if she can do something creative, then why can't I? I had people saying to me, oh, well, why can't I do something like that? And I realized there was actually a need in the community for people to have the opportunity to actually try. So I make these floral workshops. I currently run them at an art studio in Melbourne, and I run them on demand as well as needed. So basically, we choose a different theme every time. We make sure it is beginner level. It's not complex. It's not too hard. You have to have a florist certificate or training to do it. And we provide beautiful flowers, seasonal flowers and foliage. We have a friend with a local farm here on the Mornington Peninsula, and we get all our foliage from there. And we have tables and tables full of foliage and fresh flowers from the markets, and we create. And we spend an afternoon just creating. And I can see, people who, it's really interesting as a psychologist, people come into these workshops, and the first thing you'll see the anxiety, and it's like, I can't do this. I've never done this before. I've never made a bouquet. I've never made a vase arrangement. I've never made a, whatever centerpiece. And, over the course of the time that we run these workshops, I see their confidence build. I see them relax. I see them enjoy themselves. I see the pride in themselves at the end. And I possibly didn't realize how much my psychology, I don't know if you use the word skill or training or experience, actually has equipped me for that, to actually help people to be not fully confident, to help people build their confidence as they pursue something creative for themselves. So I can't help but I can't entirely separate my psychology self out from that space when I'm running these workshops, because even the way I run them, even the way that I sort of set them up and you know what I mean? Like it's very sort
I
of,
was wondering about that. Yeah, I had a
yeah.
question there about how.
Oh yeah, the two interact. They totally interact. And I usually don't let on from the outset of these workshops that I am. And sometimes over the course of these afternoons that I run, people are like, oh, they find out more about me. And I can see that that comes through in a really powerful way. So whilst it's not arts therapy in any sense, I can't help but use those skills that I have just to kind of zone in and recognize when someone's anxious and know how to deal with them and how to build their confidence and just watching them. And I thought one day after doing this workshop, I thought, man, like these people have just done 3 hours of working with flowers. I feel like that could have easily been, maybe they could have done a 1 hour talk therapy session, great, fine, but they've just done this 3 hour session of flowers and they're walking out like glowing.
Mm.
You can just really see the impact of it. So I've really become quite passionate about these workshops. I love to teach other people about how to be creative and how to implement that in their life. And then I empower them to go out and do it themselves. And I teach them how to prepare the materials and what to look for and what's in season and how to prep and condition flowers and all these like life skills. And everyone's so happy to grow in their skills. So yeah, it's been a really incredible experience.
Wow. I'm so
Yeah.
happy, like, how cool for your community that they have that and that but also that you've been, like, brave and done that because that'd be a really scary thing to
Yeah.
be like, "Okay, I'm just gonna hold these workshops now." Is that
Yes.
something that you've done before as a psychologist, like doing group
Yeah,
therapy?
yeah, for sure. So workshops are something that sort of I've done, particularly in schools, and I
Mhm.
worked a lot in the field of sort of neurodivergence and behavioral stuff. So yeah, definitely it's been part of my experience, and I'd love to do more and more. But applying it to a creative context, it's interesting because, like I said, you still use those skills, and knowing how to present and knowing how to present information in a way that's palatable. I've worked a lot in the education space, so understanding how people learn information and understanding how people receive information, understanding prompts, understanding scaffolding that people need to learn a skill. Because I know that intellectually, and I know that because of my psychology work, and I worked a lot with children and in schools. I kind of apply the same concept to these workshops. So yeah, I do. Yeah, I do see them crossing over. I definitely think it's hard when you're putting stuff out there, particularly for a small creative hustle like mine. You're using Instagram a lot and learning how to use Instagram and learning how to do reels and learning how to kind of market yourself. That's another skill, actually,
Yeah.
isn't it? What do you think? Marketing seems to be really key.
Yeah, definitely marketing is something that's key, but we're of course not taught any like business things in uni, which I don't know if I could have handled learning about business while learning about
Yes.
psychology. Yeah, no, that's definitely a big skill and just having the confidence or like I don't know if imposter syndrome or whatever you want to call it, like when you're
Yes.
doing something
Yes.
new,
Being found
copywriting.
out.
Yeah, exactly. Being found out.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Or just showing up and showing your face. And remember the first
Yes.
time I posted on, I think it was LinkedIn. I started using LinkedIn and I had my old lecturers and things on there. I was like, oh my God, can I post something? And then I was like, whatever. And I just, yeah, posted some random copywriting thing. And yeah, it was horrifying. But then you realize, oh,
Yeah. And I'm curious to ask you a question. Are you realizing there's actually quite a lot of health professionals that have these creative hustles? Yeah.
definitely huge. Yeah. So many more than I would have realized. And people doing amazing things
Right.
yeah, doing with your floristry, like people, yeah, doing all
Hmm.
sorts of different things. I
Hmm.
was talking to someone, I think, yeah, I booked in an interview with them, someone that's a stunt woman now, which is like,
Wow.
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Wow.
so like
Oh,
so
that's so
diverse. A lot of people are doing coaching and things like that, but
right. Yes,
some
yes,
that are, yeah,
yes.
that very
Right. Yeah. And I wonder,
cool.
just a comment on that, I wonder whether maybe the point of difference is the sweet spot. I mean, I'm thinking like the fact that doing something like what I'm doing, I can't speak for someone else, but doing something so different to what I've done is kind of what makes it so great, I think.
Yeah,
It's that difference. It's just a different space. It's a different focus. It's a different mindset. It's about how to make this beautiful. It's about how do I make people feel good, right? Like your motivations are different. You market yourself differently. I just think, yeah, I think it's like you say, there's a bit of imposter syndrome initially. It's like, oh, well, people find out I'm actually a psychologist. Well, how they feel about that or whatever. But yeah, that you realize you have to grow new skills when you pursue a hustle. And that's a really good skill. I can see probably going back in the one way I can see that psychology has positively impacted my ability to run things like workshops and work with people when you're interviewing them for events and what they need and so on. But I can see it going back the other way as well over time. And I think I'm still early in that journey, but I can see that the skills I'm learning from the floral design industry and space will also feed back into me running private practice and so on. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, oh, no, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, that crossover. How I've noticed it is probably the confidence. Like, I, for some reason, was feeling quite confident in my copywriting, but then my psych, because I'm quite an early career psych, so there's still
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
newness and,
Newness.
like,
Yeah.
being, yeah, confident in that. But I've noticed that in my supervisors has commented that in the last 6 months, I've got this all of a sudden this newfound confidence in my psychology work, like being, yeah,
Interesting.
in private practice. And I've noticed that, like, and I have quite a complex caseload, and it doesn't feel
Mm.
so scary. Like, I used to get burnt out quite frequently, and now I can sit there
Right.
amongst,
Okay, that's
yeah,
interesting.
it
Okay, that's
is.
interesting about the burnout. Can I make a comment on that? Because I've noticed that I am coping better with my psychology work since taking on a creative in addition. So it's kind of like what we said earlier. It seems to complement both ways. And I probably, yeah, I think what you said is really key. It seems to be almost like it's like a preventative thing. It seems to be, I don't know, it's kind of like, what's an example? You know what I mean? Like it seems to prevent that tendency. If you're tending that way, which I tend that way as well. I've had a couple of nasty burnouts. Hence, that's why I stopped doing psychology after my fourth child. I was like, I'm just burnt out. I'm kitted out. I'm just at my wit's end. But it seems to be protective. That's what the word is. It's protective
Yeah,
to have something outside of your professional work that is keeping you afloat and keeping you focused. So I'm almost wondering over time, it'd be interesting to know whether over time, as a profession, we develop greater awareness and maybe even policies around that. You can't force someone to do something outside of their professional work, but that's what I mean. I mean, like greater respect for and appreciation for things outside of our profession that actually enable us to then do our profession in a sustainable way. I just feel like there could be a really great opportunity there, I think, with your podcast as well. So growing awareness of that, of actually being a really healthy thing, nothing for us to be ashamed of. Yeah.
yeah,
So I'm really grateful for you
absolutely.
sort of pushing into that space.
Oh, thank you. And I'm, yeah, grateful for you to come on and share your story, because that's a big thing to do that. I was just thinking then when you were talking about how you're saying about, like, the huge differences between doing something that's
Mm,
so
big
different. And I
difference.
agree with you there. I think that that must have something to do with it. Like, you're
Yes.
building your, I don't know if it's like identity or sense of self or something like
Yeah.
that. You're like
Yeah.
expanding it, maybe,
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Right.
potentially.
I think certainly I would say my view of myself has, and my sense of self confidence, maybe even my sense of self esteem in a whole lot of
Yeah.
ways has gone up once I realized I could do other things. Like people would say to me for a long time, and I've had children, and people say to me, "So what are your hobbies?" I'm like, "Well, I'm a mom and I'm a psychologist." And they're like, "Okay, cool, that's fine, you know." But I have to say, like, I've really enjoyed having this additional part of my world, my view of myself. And I'm just really proud of myself. It's a really corny thing to say. I'm super proud. I'm super proud of my little extra thing that I do. Yeah. So talking to people is really fascinating and their reactions to it. It's a really always a really great conversation. They're like, "How did you end up doing that?" Like, what?
It's a good, yeah, it's a good conversation starter for sure. We haven't really talked a
Totally.
little bit about, like, your burnout and stuff. Is that something you wanna talk about or you wanna share, or is it like
Yeah.
a
I don't have heaps more to say
good
about
fit?
it. Mine was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of wrapped up in sort of having lots of children and the beginning of COVID and just kind of feeling like I said earlier. I think probably my comment would be when life can become very small when you are a working mum and you then just have your work and your kids and your work and your kids and life can feel like you're constantly grinding, you know, like forward, forward, forward without much reprieve. So like I said before, I'm really quite passionate about like young mothers and young parents actually having a space outside for themselves. You know, a lot of parents are working even with young children now, so we know that that's just the way things are. So there's less room and time perhaps for that. But my experience was actually around motherhood, around just doing psychology and around feeling like I was just giving, giving, giving all the time. And you know, actually it just brings to mind someone said something to me one day about my pursuit of floral design. They said to me, they said, "Yeah, you know, Rachel, flowers are great because they can't talk back." I love that. And I
That's
was like, "Yeah,
amazing.
they can't talk back, and they're just beautiful. And when you hold them, they're just lovely and they look at you. And this is going to set now, you're really getting my wacky side now, but like I'm telling you that plants talk to me, like plants, no kidding. Like I'll be doing an arrangement and I'll be holding a branch of something and it just says to me, I want to go there. I'm like, okay, so you're going to go there. Okay, Mr. like Rose, you're going to go there. And it sounds bizarre, but I have this like whole like conversation with the
I
plants.
love it.
They're not demanding. They don't have any kind of, they don't expect a whole lot of me. They're just
They
happy
don't
to be
know
utilized.
that's
I have totally
yeah.
made an inanimate object animate, haven't I? That's probably a concern. But right, like, so I really totally love these working with natural materials because there's no complexity in them. The worst that they'll get is that I'll have a branch and it's kind of bending to one side. And I'm like, you know what?
Well,
That's how you are. I accept you for who you are. Let's do some acceptance and commitment therapy right now. We're just going to totally own that you are bent right now. And we're going to put you here and we're going to utilize you and you've got purpose and you've got
you got
values.
purpose. Yes, you got values. That's it. Committed action.
Committed action. We're going to utilize you. And I feel like that's probably the beauty of it, you know? So I'm using these, and I think, sorry, now you've got me on a roll and I'm laughing.
I love it.
You know, plants are also imperfect, aren't they? Like there's been a movement in floristry towards wild and creative, almost like meadow style designs rather than that really strict, restricted kind of bunches. And so with that, I think comes an acceptance that nature is wild. Nature is imperfect. Nature is unpredictable. Nature surprises you. So when you're working with natural materials, you're constantly confronted with the imperfections and yet beauty of our world. So at a deeper level, I feel like it gives you a great appreciation of people as humans. We are imperfect. We are imperfectly perfect, but we all have purpose. And we all can be utilized despite our imperfection. And I feel like there's been this deeper, very deep-seated kind of change probably in how I view the world and others as I've worked in nature. So there you go. That's probably a very deep kind of anecdote there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that makes me
Yeah.
and
It's
my
nice,
heart
isn't
so
it?
warm. It is so love. Like
Yeah.
it's how
Yeah.
profound is that? Like
It
so
totally is.
profound.
It is. It
That
is. Yeah.
it's a beautiful metaphor. And when you were
Yeah. Thank
talking
you.
about that, what about your levels of perfectionism? Because as psychologists, we're
Yes.
generally very perfectionistic. So,
We are. And I think that what I've just said really taps into it. It's the realization that I can't make that branch bend the way I want it to bend for this thing, right? So
mhm.
I've got to let that go. I do think that most people who would describe themselves as artistic would say there's some level of perfectionism in terms of like, can I describe it like this? Like when you start training and learning about design, you view the world in a certain way. So then you're constantly
Yeah.
kind of, your brain is kind of assessing what's looking right. And I can't always tell you what's wrong with, if I've made an arrangement, I stand back and look at it. I can't always tell you exactly what's wrong with it, but my eye will say to me, that's part's not right. That flower needs to move there, that needs to move there. So the only perfectionistic part that does come out is like wanting it to look a certain way that fits your eye. Like, so I can't describe it, but like the feedback that you get. So I
Mhm.
feel like it does come out a little bit. I feel like it's a real challenge to perfectionism because, like I said, working with natural materials and you're dealing with dirt and mess. Like I think you can see green on my fingernails probably right now. I was making big arrangements today and like you're dealing with mess and your hands are sticky and your
Mm.
floor is dirty and the leaves are sticky and wet. Like floristry is not a glamorous job. It's messy, it's hard work, dealing with water splashing everywhere, your clothes. And so there's this kind of mess that goes with it. Whereas in psychology, it's like you've got your nice shirt on, you're in your nice neat
Mhm.
chair and your vacuum floor. And so the shift in environment is probably the best thing for those of us who are more perfectionistically inclined. And, often the mess comes before the beauty as well. And again, that's a metaphor I think is great for our work in psychology. We things sometimes get messy before we can see clarity. And sometimes that mess
Yeah.
goes for a long time. And I think having grace for yourself in that. And I think, yeah, when you work with natural materials like flowers, you're dealing with that mess. But then you see that the flower grows through the dirt to create a beautiful bloom, right? So
Mhm.
it all comes around. And that's something I haven't spoken about. But the other part of what I've been doing is trying to grow as much as I can myself. I'm really passionate about sustainable floristry. I'm really passionate about utilizing local and seasonal. Like I said, I've got a fair bit of plants and foliage on my own property. I live on half an acre. I've got flowers I grow in different seasons and I utilize like local people's plants and materials. So like local neighbors and people in my community and like I'll knock on their door, can I use this? And so, yeah, the other part of all this is kind of the watching and seeing plants grow and understanding the cycles and the seasons. I think it just is just really helpful to understand human nature as well. I don't know, cycles, seasons, mess,
Cycle. Yeah.
it's like all those
Mhm.
things, they kind of come back around to human experience too. Yeah.
They
Yeah. There you go. I've
do.
gotten
They
very deep
do.
now, haven't I?
Yeah, no, that's I love it. I like the deep the deepness. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm all here for that. And
Yeah.
we haven't really talked about, I don't know, maybe this isn't something one of your favorite topics, but what are the type of design and frameworks or theories and things like that have you learned?
Yeah, no, when you do forestry training, you do like one of the basic levels of training in any artistic profession is understanding principles of design. So like rhythm and balance and flow. What are the other ones? There's six principles of design. I feel like I should write them off the top of my head, but basically you go through these principles of design and they are for all artistic professions. They will use the same thing. So I think it's like design 101 probably. It applies to flowers as well. So understanding the flowers in the arrangement, understanding the space between the components of the arrangement, understanding the balance, understanding the rhythm, I guess, of that, understanding the color contrasts and understanding things like, the concept of a color wheel. That was a whole new thing to me, like which colors go together and are you using monotone designs or are you using complementing designs? So it can get complex as well with flowers because flowers also have meanings. There's whole books and I read them in my evenings just for fun because I'm a nerd, like different floral meanings and like what different flowers represent. So then knowing which flowers for what occasions and knowing, yeah. So there's a whole lot to the design process that is technical and it is that cerebral part you do have to know. But then there's this just magical, intuitive part too. So where you've got your materials. And I just actually, this is going to sound, again, stuff I've not said before, but I actually vision my designs beforehand. Like today, I was making a native arrangement, and I knew that I had the flowers, but I knew I needed grevillea foliage, and I was completely fixated on it. And I made my girlfriend bring me this grevillea foliage so I could like put it together. And I knew as soon as I saw it, I was like, that is what I need. These flowers need this foliage, and that's how it's going to work. And it looked amazing. I can send you a photo.
Mm.
So I
Yeah,
think it's
please do.
also the design
Put it on
aspect is
that
really
Instagram.
great. Yes, totally. Yeah. So I feel like there's this visioning part of it around the design part that's just so nice to think about. Like I just love thinking about it. I literally wake up thinking about my floral designs and it's been so good for my well-being.
Yeah, something that's so nourishing and gives you joy and gives you energy.
Really.
Yeah, vitality.
I have a real highlight and that's to share that we took our family to Europe at the end of last year. A long anticipated trip. It was a 4-month trip. So this was a big, big deal. We took our
Whoa.
four children overseas. And my niece was getting married in the south of Germany near the French border. And she asked me to do the flowers. So I actually did my first wedding florals in Europe. And it was incredible. It was such an incredible joy. And I spent days and days, and she was born in Australia. So she asked me to just do all these eucalyptus. You could actually order eucalyptus there. So I was working with
Wow.
Australian natives and eucalyptus and the smell just smelled like Australia. And I'm there working these materials. And what's my point in saying this to you? The joy, that's right. So then I did this for days and days and days, preparing all the flowers for the whole wedding, the bridal bouquets, the table pieces, the arch. And at the wedding, someone said to me something like, "Oh, I heard you did the flowers for the wedding." I said, "Yeah, I did the flowers." And I said to her, "I'm a little bit weary, but I'm okay." She goes, "You look amazing. You look energized. Like, how did you do that?" And I said, "I don't know. I just feel like so energized by doing it. I didn't feel burdened by it." And they couldn't believe it. This Australian woman with 4 kids was over there doing the flowers and she was feeling good. I was feeling great. And it just goes to show like how energizing it can be to have a creative outlet. I think it's
Yeah,
hugely energizing. Yeah. Yeah.
but
I was buzzing.
oh,
I was totally buzzing. Yeah.
that would have been what an experience
Amazing.
overseas doing that, like going to markets. What were the differences like between flower markets here and over there?
Oh, good question. I mean, did you get a different range of flowers over there? So flowers grown in the Northern Hemisphere, particularly countries like Germany, which are bordering onto the Netherlands. So they have beautiful flowers in the Netherlands and they get shipped all around Europe. And so I think there was a difference in the actual flowers, which is really exciting and special to work with different flowers. When you're a florist, you kind of get used to your, local flowers and what grows in season in your area, like difference between, for example, flowers in Victoria versus flowers in Western Australia or Queensland. So that's always very exciting. being in different places. So the flowers are different. The industry is obviously different. And apparently, the way I did the flowers for this wedding, the feedback was they don't see things like that very often. Like the way I actually did it was different to what they've done. So they were quite surprised by that. They just have different methods, I guess, and different approaches, European floral design. So it was really well received because it was just different. Like I just did I wasn't doing like neat little things. I did like these big explosions of eucalyptus, and they were just like pouring out everywhere. And like the bridal bouquet was like explosions of eucalyptus. And everyone was like, wow, I've never seen a bouquet like that before. And I was like, welcome to Australia. Yeah.
Explosions of eucalyptus. That's such a beautiful image there. It's
Yeah. So
great
that was a really
language,
special
great
thing.
copy.
And I was going to say one more thing on that is that to be able to
Yeah.
offer that gift to people in my family, I've done, a couple of special events for family and friends. I feel like it's a really beautiful gift.
Yeah.
It's a great gift to give to people. So all my friends get flowers from me now, and it's just a lovely gift and a lovely skill to utilize. Yeah, which is something I'd never had before to offer.
It's so special. It's so
Totally.
precious. Well, you're making me
Totally.
want to learn how to do it now.
Yes.
Which
Come
I
on to a
call
workshop.
myself. But yeah, I would so love to do that. Would so love to do that. I'm actually coming
Yes.
down to Victoria
Cool.
in September. So
Ah, awesome. Well, there you go. I'm running my next workshop on the 22nd, 21st, I think. So if you're down here that time, you can come to a workshop. I encourage everybody. I think that, yeah, maybe I should run a special workshop just for psychologists. There we go. Maybe I should like
yes,
market it through the
please.
APS and be like, hey guys,
Yes, yeah, please.
let's do
Yes.
something
Yeah.
different, Bridget.
Oh, I think there'll be so many people who get around that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now for some rapid fire questions. I'm curious about this one, but what is your favorite movie?
So my favorite movie is the movie Cruella, the more recent live action one. Absolutely love Cruella, and I love the main character, Cruella. I mean, she's just so incredible. I love her background, her story. This is the movie character, obviously. I love I love that she's so creative in this wacky way. And she's kind of this hidden talent. She's got this whole like trauma background. It's just amazing. Just the power of an individual who's driven, hey? Love that movie.
Oh, I haven't seen Cruella, the live action movie. 101 Dalmatians is a film I haven't seen for a long, 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 long time. So it would be cool to go and rewatch with a psychologist hat on. Cool. And what about a concert that you'll never forget?
I guess my favorite concert that I've ever attended, we were in Spain last year and we actually attended a concert underground in a cave. No kidding. We were on an island called Mallorca. We went deep inside a cave. There were, stalactites, stalagmites, and you go deep underground and you end up in this sort of underground theater auditorium. It's crazy. And there's a body of water and they have these beautiful string orchestra playing their music as they go up and down this body of water in candlelight or torchlight. It was crazy. It was the most amazing concert with the most amazing acoustics I've ever heard. And yeah, I mean, only in Spain, hey? That was my favorite concert.
No way. That sounds incredible. Wow, that would have been like goosebump central. Never been to one of those candlelight concerts, but I do see them advertised, so I'll have to add that to my list as well. And lastly, what's an absurd thing that you love?
An absurd thing that I love is I love bubble wrap. Every time something arrives in the mail in bubble wrap, I immediately grab it and I have to pop it until I've popped all the little bubbles and they're all gone. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know if it's like a sensory thing, but yeah, I'm really into that.
That's so good. Yeah, no, bubble wrap is the best. But thank you so much, Rachel. Now, tell us how we can get in contact with you.
Sure. I probably should have said this earlier on. My business is called Floral Art by Rachel. That's my business. I'm on Instagram at Floral Art by Rachel. My website's the same, Floral Art by Rachel. And I feel like, where else am I? Yeah, sometimes I get posts on different forums around sort of workshops for Melbourne and stuff like that. But yeah, you can get in touch with me via Instagram or email, flowers@rachel.au. And like I said, I provide events and workshops on demand as well. So if people want me to come into their organization and run a workshop for them, a creative floral workshop, I can do that. Yeah, just seeing where it goes.
That's so exciting. Thank you so much for our conversation today. I feel really energized after it. So
Great. Awesome. Loved
no, it's
talking
been
to you,
so
Caitlin.
fun.
And And thanks for doing what you're doing. And thank you for, I guess, bringing this stuff to awareness that that's a really cool thing to have a hustle outside of your health profession. I think it's super healthy.
Yay, thank you so much. All right. That's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to Healers with Hustles. If you've enjoyed today's episode, will you do me a tiny favor and subscribe to the show? Just tap the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform and you'll be the first to know as soon as a new episode drops. Thanks so much for listening. Okay, ta-ta for now.